Good evening to everyone, wherever you're watching this from. My name's Professor Tim Campbell. I'm a visiting Professor of International Management at the University of Northampton, and I'm going to be taking you through this webinar. Well, I also should say I look after the DBA program locally. What I mean locally is the Middle East and North Africa intake, predominantly students from Middle East and North Africa. We get students from further abroad as well. But I look after this program locally. So I'm going to tell you all about the DBA. So it'll take me about 20 minutes. I'll just go through my presentation. And then once I've done that, there'll be plenty of opportunities for you to ask me any questions that you might have. And I'm just having a quick look at my attendees, and I can see got people from all over by the looks, all over the place. That's fabulous. So as I say, welcome to you all wherever you are. Let's get cracking then. Before I talk about the DBA program and the doctorates, just a little bit about Northampton and the university, because most of you, I would probably haven't been to Northampton. Some of you may have been. But in case you didn't know, Northampton is a town in England, in the UK. It's about an hour by train from London. It's a very old historic town, been around for an awfully long time. And in Northampton, or it used to be just on the outskirts of Northampton, just in the countryside, you used to find the University of Northampton. But they opened a new campus, a brand new, entirely new campus in August of 2018. So you now find the campus right in the center of the town. So it's a fantastic investment and a fantastic thing for the town. In fact, if I go back just 2 slides, that's a picture of part of the campus there. I've been there a few times, and it really is a fantastic, futuristic campus. Very much designed for distance learning as well, which is interesting because it was thought of and opened before COVID, before we're in the situation we are now. So very well set up for distance learning. Anyway, so that's Northampton. There you will find the university itself. And I took these 2 pictures when I was there because this is the graduate students research space, which is a floor of the Senate building, and you can see it on the right there. And when you're on the DBA program, if anytime you are in the UK, you want to drop into the campus, you can go and work in this workspace for as long as you want. That's for the doctorate students there solely. The university itself is a very long history, dates back to about the 13th century. Education in Northampton and very early origins, but the modern University of Northampton's, I suppose, date back about 100 years to where it is today. It has about 14,000 students and 1,500 staff. And I've just picked out one thing here that I think is particularly relevant, is that the UK government does something called the Teaching Excellence Framework, which is a ranking of universities according to their excellence in teaching. And you can either get a gold, silver, or a bronze. And Northampton was awarded a gold, which is the highest standard, which I just think is a nice indication of the quality of the teaching that you'll get at the university and the tutors that you'll meet on the program. But of course, have a look at the university's own website, find out all about it, do lots of research and find out the history and everything else. Because what I really want to talk to you about tonight, of course, are doctorates and the DBA. So as a starting point, let's just begin with what is a doctorate? The question I get all the time. Now, doctorates have been around in European universities since medieval times, hundreds of years, and they've very much changed and developed and gone around the world, and very much so over that time. But where we are today with doctorates, firstly, it's considered a terminal degree, which means it's the highest degree you can achieve. Generally, bachelor's, master's, doctorate. Now, there are some exceptions to that. There are some postdoctoral qualifications that you can do, but generally speaking, it's the terminal degree. Bachelor's, master's, and then on to doctorate. Now, secondly, there are 2 types of doctorates. One we call professional doctorates. And these doctorates are for people who want to study at that level who are primarily engaged in a profession. So, for example, when you go and see your doctor, your medical doctor, that person usually will have a doctorate, but it'll be a professional doctorate. It'll be an MD. And for those people, they're primarily engaged in a profession rather than primarily engaged in research or in universities. For engineers, you can do a doctorate of engineering. Pharmacists can do a doctorate of pharmacy. Dentists do a doctorate in dentistry. Educators, education, you can do a doctorate in education. And of course, for business and management people, the professional doctorate is the DBA, the Doctorate of Business Administration. So professional doctorates are those who are primarily engaged within a profession. The other type of doctorate we have are for those who are primarily engaged with research. And the most well-known of those that you're probably aware of is a PhD. So they're academically equivalent. They're both at exactly the same level, level 8. It's just their audience is different and the outcomes are different. For example, for a DBA, your project, your research project, must have a practical use, a practical application in business and management. If you were doing a PhD in some sort of business and management project, that's not a requirement. It could be a purely theoretical thesis that you come up with. It doesn't need that practical application, but it does need to be a contribution to knowledge. So there are many similarities to them. They are both research-based degrees. When you get on the DBA, you'll do a big research project. If you were to do a PhD, you would do a big research project. But the difference is, and just what I mentioned, the outcomes and the audience of the two. And of course, importantly, both confer upon the bearer the title doctor. So when you have a doctorate degree, you can use the title. Just a final word on this, because I quite like this quote. I know it's a wordy slide, and I'll read through it, but I think it just makes the differences quite clear. And for you guys who are thinking about doing a DBA, I want you to be absolutely clear of what you're getting yourselves into and that you're making the right choice. So I'll read through this. So to begin with, we've got here at the top, PhD programs in business focus intensively on preparing candidates to conduct highly specialized scholarly research. They focus on the development of new theory in management, economics, and related fields. Most PhD in business administration graduates lead to careers as university researchers and professors or senior researchers in business and government. Okay, so that's what the PhD is about. The DBA, Doctorate of Business Administration programs, focus on the application of the theory rather than on the development of new theory. The DBA, by virtue of its focus on the application of theory, has more practical application in managerial settings than the PhD. So hopefully you start to see the difference between the two now. So DBA people, you will find primarily engaged with an industry. However, you do find that it's not cut and dry. I worked with plenty of people in universities who were lecturers but had DBAs. But primarily DBA people would be in industry. Primarily PhDs would be more so in your university settings and research settings. But again, that's not cut and dry. There are plenty of people who work in business and management who have PhDs. Okay, so you see what I mean. There is a difference, but it's not completely, it's not completely one or the other. Okay, that's enough about the difference between the DBA and PhD. Let's take a look at what sorts of things do DBA students study? What sorts of topics do Doctorate of Business and Management people study? And here on this list, I've just given these are topics all of our students. I've just did a random selection of topics I've picked from what our students are doing or have done. Some of these students have finished now. These aren't the exact titles of their work, they're just the general areas they worked in. But you see it's a real mix of business and management topics. We've got a critical examination of a performance management system, leadership styles, we've got one about corporate governance in the public sector, another about the value chain, one's looking at reasons for investing in high-tech startups, resolving project conflicts, agile project management, and one of my students who was looking at knowledge transfer in management training settings. So it could be anything: finance, accounting, strategy, human resource management, organizational behavior. And I'm also seeing a lot these days of sort of more contemporary topics. I'm seeing a lot of sustainability, social responsibility, things like artificial intelligence and its application in businesses. What else am I seeing? Oh, big data, things like that as well. So there's all the sorts of traditional topics, then any of these contemporary topics as well we're seeing come through. So anything business and management can be a DBA topic. Let's look at how it's actually taught then. So the DBA program, let's start at the top here. The next start date is the 12th intake. The 12th intake of this Middle East and Africa program, the one that I look after, and that the very first workshop is on the 9th to the 12th of November. As the 12th intake, we have 2 a year, so we're getting on to the 6th year of this program running, so which is good. It's got a nice pedigree running now. So it starts, the very first workshop is 9th to the 12th of November, but that does not mean you can have your applications in a week before then. Applications, which I'll talk lots more about later, really need to start getting those in now because it's quite a process to get accepted on the program. But anyway, the start date is 9th to 12th of November. And what you do for the first 2 years is you do taught modules. And these modules tell you everything you need to know about how to do the second 2 years, which is when you actually do a research project, you do the thesis. So it's split into a 4-year program. First 2 years, you'll be taught by the professors from the University of Northampton. These are the things you'll be taught, 6 different modules spread over 2 years. So they're about 2 or 3 months apart. They start with principles of research, which is a 4-day module. The rest are 3 days, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, until you get to your last module, which is another 4-day module. Now, these used to be taught here in the UAE face-to-face. The Northampton professors would fly over and teach face-to-face. But ever since COVID happened, of course, it's simply not possible, and I can't even guess when we might be able to go back to that. So what we've been doing instead is holding these programs by exactly the same professors, doing exactly the same things, but using a virtual classroom. So they're still either held over 3 or 4 days, but instead of being face-to-face, you'll be face-to-face with your tutor using virtual classroom technology. Similar to what we're using now, except the platform the universities use are far more geared towards teaching and far more interactive types of things. The full timetable is out when all these modules are. So if you don't have it, please do contact your consultant from Stafford who will make sure you have it. So first 2 years taught, second 2 years you go on to that thesis where you're supervised by a director of studies and 2 supervisors. So that's how the program works. Just a word about assessment. All of these different modules in the first 2 years have different assessments. They can be an essay, a seminar, presentation and debate, a research report, you do another research proposal, a final one at the end, practice viva voce, all sorts of different things. Your tutors in the modules, who is each taught by an expert tutor, or actually a team of tutors, will tell you exactly what you need to do to actually be assessed on the module. Then when you get to the research thesis stage, that's second 2 years, that's a 40,000 word thesis, and that's assessed by a viva voce examination. Viva voce just means an oral examination. So this is one time where you would need to go to the University of Northampton, if that's possible. What we're having to do at the moment is we're having to do them virtually, but you defend your thesis with a person who is from an examiner from a different university, another UK university, but different University of Northampton. And then you have another assessor who is somebody from the University of Northampton, but not a part of your supervisory team. And they'll read your thesis and you need to defend it. And that's what a viva voce is. And if you pass that, happy days, you finished. So that's assessment. There's lots and lots of support on the program. The ones on the program themselves, there's the international DBA program leader, who sits at the University of Northampton. You will meet that person at the interview stage. If you get invited for an interview at the application, you'll be interviewed by the international program leader and another person from Northampton who will be an expert in your subject. Each of the modules has an expert tutor or team of tutors, I should say. I mentioned at the thesis stage, you have a director of studies and 2 supervisors. There's administration at Northampton, but also locally, if you get lost, Stafford can help you find the right person. I should say a word or two, just mention Stafford as well. Stafford markets and recruits the program here in the Middle East and Africa on behalf of the university. So when I say Stafford, I'm talking about your academic consultants at Stafford and your marketing that you've seen. But once you're actually on the program, you're completely a student of the university. So do bear that in mind. The virtual learning environment that we use is called NILE, Northampton Integrated Learning Environment. Every module has its own site, one of these NILE sites. This NILE site has everything you need for that module. It has a link to the virtual classroom where you attend your classes. It has all the module activities, it has videos, it has readings, it has links to the library. It has everything that you will need to be able to complete that module. And then the university, of course, has a very extensive online library that you have access to that has millions of different things, millions of different resources. There's also the graduate school. The graduate school, I can just see someone with their hand up. What I'll do, look, I'll just go through the presentation first, and then you can ask me as many questions as you want at the end, just helps me so I can so I don't forget anything. And I might answer your question anyway between now and the end of the presentation. Anyway, so where was I? So that's the program. Also, your support. So here's all the support you have to actually do the program. When you become a doctoral student at the university, you also become enrolled with the graduate school. The graduate school looks after all postgraduate researchers at the university. And here is just what the graduate school's aim is. It's a university-wide framework for training, support, career preparation and administration to help you throughout your postgraduate research degree and early research career to achieve your potential. So it has things that can do for you. For example, it has an extensive program of online training that you can attend for free, of course. They have all sorts of workshops, such as writing a literature review, research ethics. SPSS is a tool we use to analyze quantitative data. So perhaps you feel like you need a bit more support or another workshop on that, you can. In Vivo is a tool we use to analyze qualitative data. There's workshops on that as well. So all of these things, the graduate, and by the way, it also lets you, students will present their work through the graduate school so you can see other students' work. So there's all sorts of things it does for you. So remember, this is all in addition to your program. You'll be fully supported through your program, but if there's other things you feel you need, there's other workshops, training, other support that you need, that will come from the graduate school. And that's all voluntary. You do that if you want to do it, if you feel you need it. So lots and lots of support. Let me get on to just entry requirements, proposals and things now. So the usual entry requirement is you'll hold a master's degree in a business-related subject completed within the last 10 years. Now, if it's longer than 10 years, as long as you've been doing some courses to keep up your knowledge, perhaps courses you do at work or something, or even on your own time, maybe you've done some courses, you can show you're sort of keeping up your knowledge up, then that should be okay. You need to have a minimum of 5 years work experience, at least some of which need to be at a senior level, and you should be employed in a leadership management role capable of supporting the program learning outcomes. Because a number of the modules in the first 2 years will ask you to relate things to your own organization and your own leadership and management practice. So you need to be working in a role that will achieve where you'll be able to do that. The application requirements. I mentioned a while back that it is quite a process to go through the application, so you need to be working on all this now. The first bits are fairly standard, a CV of course. A personal statement, you need to talk a little bit about why do you want to do a doctorate? Why do you want to do a DBA and not a PhD? How will it improve your career? These types of things, or just with your future. Because what the admissions team is looking for is that you've really thought about why you want to do a doctorate. Because I am not going to say it's easy. It's not. A doctorate is a big step up from a master's. And it's a lot of commitment from students. It's time, it's resources. So the university wants to make sure that the people who it admits onto the program have thought about why they're doing the program and really want to do the program. So that's what you want to get across in the personal statement, is that you realize it is a commitment, but you're ready for it and you really want to do it. Then you've got 2 references, ideally an academic reference and a professional one, but we realize some people may be quite some time since their masters, so they may not be able to get an academic, so we usually will accept 2 professionals. Then usual, your degrees, certificates and transcripts, evidence of English language ability if you're asked for it. If your master's was in English, then that's not going to be an issue. And I've just highlighted the last 2 things because they're important. Because with all these documents, you'll also submit a proposal. And I'll talk more about that in the next couple of slides. Then the first step of the admissions process is that the admissions team will look at this. And if they like what they see, they'll invite you to an interview. And as I mentioned, the interview will be with the International DBA Program Leader and an expert in your subject. So if you're doing your proposal's about strategy, for example, it'll be somebody in strategy. Or if it's about HRM, it'll be somebody about HRM. And they'll ask you all about your application documents, but particularly they'll ask you about your proposal, what you want to do. So you need to spend some time on that proposal. It's not something you can write in a day. You need to make sure it is strong. Because firstly, it won't even get past the first step if it's not. But then when you get to the interview, you're really going to be asked about it. So you need to make sure it's strong. As I say, just a couple of words about these proposals. Firstly, they're required for 3 reasons. The admissions team wants to know, is the applicant capable of studying at doctoral level? As I said, it's a big step from masters. They want to look at this document and say, they don't expect it to be perfect, of course. As soon as you get on the program, you're going to learn everything about research methods. But at this stage, they want to see you're a strong student. They want to see you're academically capable of actually completing the doctorate degree. Then they want to check, does the proposed research fit with the nature of a DBA? Essentially, is it something business and management? And does it have a practical outcome? And the last one generally isn't a problem, but it's about whether the supervisor, they'll be checking that the university has someone who can actually supervise you. Now, all major areas of management can be supervised, but if you come up with a proposal that's about something very technical or specialized, it's possible that the university simply doesn't have somebody with the expertise to be able to supervise you. So at the early proposal stage, make sure it generally fits into one of the broad areas of business and management and isn't about some very technical IT system or quality system or something like that. What do they look for in a proposal? Can it make a practical contribution to business and management? They will look to see that you can reference, that you can use literature and reference it using the Harvard method. They'll see, can you write a brief literature review and at least cite some authors in the field? And you have a very basic understanding of research methods. And what I put at the bottom there is all business and management master's graduates should already have those skills. So if you've passed your master's, you should have those skills to be able to put that proposal together. The fees, These, have a look at Stafford Global's website for the current fees. I say that because they can change from intake to intake, so I want to make sure you're getting the absolute up-to-date fees. But I think when you see them, you will find, remember, this is a taught program. It's not an online taught program. You know, it's not a self-study online thing. It's a taught program by the university itself. Even though we have to teach virtually these days, it's still synchronous, it's still face-to-face, and it's still considered taught. So for that type of a doctorate program, it is still very reasonable. Last couple of things from me before I promise you can ask any question you want. What should you do? Why should you do a DBA at Northampton? It's an investment in your future, both in academic and professional fields. It's the highest qualification in business and management. You'll contribute to business and management practice. It would be expected that your thesis would be published. There's international and local supervision and support, and you have those workshops from leading international faculty. And a quote from me, a final word from me. Completion of the Northampton DBA will set you apart as an expert able to lead and manage at the highest levels. You'll have made a unique contribution to your field and developed outstanding analytical, critical, creative, and reflective skills so needed in today's business world. So a DBA, once you study at doctorate level, it really does set you apart. Very few people study to that level, and doing so is an incredible journey, an incredible achievement once you get there. All right, how did I do? That was about 20 minutes, I think. Oh, I'm a bit longer. It was about 30. Never mind. Questions? Now, the easiest way to do this, because I see I've got quite a bunch of you here, is to use that question. Is to type your questions for me using your question box on the right. You're welcome to talk to me as well if you want, but I just find this is the easiest way. I'm just opening it up now and I can see lots and lots of questions. Righty. Box in place. Okay, here's a question about the interview. How long does it take? What should you be preparing? So let me read these questions out. What is the nature of the interview? How long does it take? And what should I prepare? So the interview, as I mentioned, is with the international DBA program leader and a subject expert. And it takes usually about 30 minutes. And you should prepare. They will talk mostly about your research proposal, but they'll also ask you about your other application documents. So they'll ask you about your personal statement. Why do you want to do a DBA, for example? They'll ask you about your professional position, your work, that type of thing. But mostly you need to know that research proposal because that's what they'll chat about. Are there any additional expenses beside the fees? No, there's not. That's everything. The only exception is when we used to have the face-to-face workshops here in the UAE. If you weren't from the UAE, you would have to pay for your flights and accommodation to get here. But of course, that's not happening at the moment. And I'm afraid I have no idea when we might get back to that. So everything's virtual at the moment. So no, there's no additional fees. Here's a question from Badria. Is the DBA totally online? Yes, it is delivered totally online at the moment, and the November intake, the workshops will be virtual. We hope we will be able to get back to those face-to-face workshops, but I can't even guess when that might be, because firstly, the university needs to be comfortable that it will send somebody from the UK here to the UAE, but also students need to be comfortable. They come from all around the region in Africa, that they can come to the UAE and that they're happy to do that as well. And at the moment, that's just obviously we're nowhere near close to that. So you will study it totally online, but remember what I said, it's still not an online degree, it's a taught degree. Those workshops, they're synchronous, they're face-to-face. So it's delivered online, but it's considered a taught part-time degree. Mania's got a question. Oh yeah, Mania's just asking, do we have a supervisor in the field of sports management? I'm sure they do, yeah. When I said don't do something technical, I meant something very specialized. If you're in a general area like sport, something like that, fitness, but obviously I'm sure you're looking at the management of that type of thing, then you'd be fine. There'll certainly be someone in that type of an area. And certainly it's an industry that's taken off a lot lately, hasn't it? The fitness and leisure industry. Benjamin, I have this potential research topic, the effectiveness of funding sources on agricultural projects in Cameroon. And you're asking, is it too specific? No, again, that's absolutely fine, because you're sort of looking at the effect. I mean, of course, I'd have to see your draft, which brings me on to another point, by the way. You're absolutely welcome to send me your draft proposals, and when you talk to your consultant at Stafford, I'm sure they will mention that to you, so I can get it before you submit. In fact, I actually tell my consultants at Stafford that I want to see them all of the proposals before they're submitted to the university, so I can get a better idea that they're on the right track. So obviously, I'd need to see a bit more information about that, but no, definitely not too specific. About funding sources of agriculture, yeah, no, that's pretty general business and management stuff. That would be fine. More on the assessment. Is it an essay or question or answer? The assessments at doctoral level, they're probably different than things you would have done in your master's. And it depends what the module is about. So if you're looking at quantitative analysis, the assessment is about looking that you'll be given some data and then you'll have to do a quantitative analysis of it. The qualitative module, where you learn about advanced qualitative methods, that's all about analyzing interviews and analyzing word types of data. So whatever you do is directly relevant to whatever module you're studying. So it's not quite, you can't quite say it's as simple as an essay or something like that. They're different, they're targeted to whatever the module is about. But the tutor of those modules will tell you everything you need to know about assessment. Where was I? Here I am. Pearl. After submitting your application documents, when do you receive a response and notice for the interview? Yeah, now that's a very good question. Once you put your application documents in, as I said, it is quite a time-consuming process because it needs to go through the administration at Northampton, who then pass it on to the DBA team, who then have to look at it. Then if you're invited for an interview, they need to organize a time where the DBA program leader can be there, where the subject expert can be there, and of course when you can be there, the student. So I suppose from, if you're say to start to finish, it actually varies quite a bit. It might be done quite quickly because everybody's available and it can be done quite quickly, or it might be a bit longer. I always say at the very outside, 6 weeks from start to finish. But hopefully it's more like 4 weeks to get to there, maybe a bit earlier, hopefully. But as I say, just get those applications in as quick as you can to make sure you don't miss any deadlines. Which city will have the face-to-face classes? It will be back here in the UAE. And again, as I've already said before, I just cannot even predict when that might be. The entry requirements for a master's degree, has it to be in business and management, or could it be in AI or data science? It should be in, most will be in business and management, but something like AI or data science could work fine as well, as long as you also have lots of management experience. And then for your proposal, you can look at things like AI or data science in the context of business and management. So the admissions team would look at something like that. So I'd definitely say put an application. Oh, well done, Abdullah. I love this question. Is it possible to finish the program in 3 years? So often I get asked this question, is it possible to finish it in less than 4 years by people who haven't started the program? When people are on the program, I never get that question again because they realize it is a lot of effort and you need that 4 years. there's simply no point in trying to finish earlier. What you want to be concentrating on finishing is finishing and passing and getting it done. So the first 2 years are set because that's your taught modules. You've got your module, you've got your assignment hand in, it takes 2 years. That can't be sped up. If you really wanted to do your thesis quicker, you could. I think the student who's done it the fastest of people who have finished, I think we had a student do it in 3 years and 10 months, from start of the program to viva voce. So you could trim a little bit off, but I don't really recommend it. You're far better, use your 4 years, use your time, and just make sure you pass. Can you consider someone with 10 years of working experience, but has not worked in a management role? Well, I think if you've had that much work experience, you probably find you've had management responsibilities, and that's what they'll be looking for. So in your application, if you can accentuate things where you've worked as a part of a team, you've planned things, you've organized work, you've been a part of projects, if you can really accentuate those in your application, that's the key thing. You don't necessarily have to have the word manager in your title, as long as you've had management responsibilities. Because we actually see these days, it's actually less and less common for people to have manager in their title, certainly as it used to be 10, 20 years ago, becoming less. Yeah. Oh, you meant which city? We held them in UAE. They were in, the last ones we held just before COVID were in Ajman. And I'm trying for the life of me to remember exactly where it was, what the hotel was called, but I can't remember. But your consultant at Stafford, I'm sure, can tell you. But if we get them back, I'm sure we'd hold them in the same place because it was a very nice place. I have a few I've jumped over, I think, as well. I'm just going to check again that I didn't miss anyone. Oh, here's one about missing workshops. No, on the DBA program, you must attend the workshops. Crucially important. Now, of course, if something happens, because if you miss the workshop, you're going to find it very difficult to do the module. But of course, if something happens, health or something outside of your control, then your module team will understand and they'll try to catch you up. But they always expect that you will attend those, be there to attend those workshops. And here's one here, will the degree state online distance learning? Absolutely not. Remember what I said, it's not an online degree, it's a taught degree. I think that's probably about all of them. One more from me. Can I change to a different, oh good, this is a good question too. Can I change to a different research topic than what I have proposed in the application? I would say most students don't completely change their topic. So if they come up with something in human resource management, for example, at the end of the first 2 years, you'll write a full proposal based on what you've learned over those 2 years. You will find that proposal is very different to the one you submitted to begin with. Now, it's usually in the same topic. So as I said, if someone's doing HRM, they'll usually still do something in HRM, but they'll find it's quite different to what they thought they might do at the start. And that's understandable, because in those first 2 years, you're learning all about what makes a good proposal. You're learning all these things. And so it's absolutely fine that you will amend your proposal. You could change topics if you wanted to, but most people tend to stick with the one that they're on. But you are not bound to that topic that you give in the application stage. All righty, I think I've got it then. If you do have any questions, anyway, there's my details. As I mentioned before with proposals, they will all come to me anyway for comment. So, but you're all welcome just to email them directly to me. As I said, the easiest way for me to really understand what you're wanting to do is for you to actually have a go at the proposal first. And then it gives me a much better idea and understanding of what you're really trying to do. So it's absolutely fine to send that in to me, and I will give you my comments. Other than that, I think I've managed all the questions. I think I've done everything I need to tell you. So the last thing from me to say is thanks so much for listening, everybody. And I really hope I'm going to see you at that first workshop in November. And please get those applications in as soon as you can. Okay, everyone. Thanks for now. Bye-bye.